My name is Ikra, and until that night, my life was small, loud, and constantly exhausted. Small apartment. Loud traffic outside the window. And a heart always racing against unpaid bills. I was 22, working double shifts at a pizza place that smelled permanently of burnt cheese and regret. The kind of place where dreams came to die slowly, one late delivery at a time. That night, my manager shoved one last box into my hands just as I was about to clock out. Last delivery, he said. Big tip if you're lucky. I glanced at the receipt. The address didn't make sense. It wasn't an apartment. It wasn't even a normal house. It was a mansion. I laughed under my breath. Rich people ordering cheap pizza. I muttered. Yeah, right. Still, I needed the money. Rent was due. My phone bill was overdue. And my so-called luck had never shown up unless it was to test my patience. I hopped on my scooter and followed the GPS as the city lights faded behind me. The road grew darker. Quieter. Streetlights disappeared one by one, replaced by tall iron gates and trees so old they looked like they remembered secrets. When the GPS said you have arrived, I thought it had glitched. In front of me stood a massive black gate, taller than any building I had ever lived in. Security cameras followed my every move. The gate slowly opened with a low mechanical hum, like the mansion was breathing. I swallowed hard. Just a delivery, I whispered to myself. In and out. The driveway stretched forever. At the end of it stood the house. No, not a house. A palace. White stone walls, glowing windows, and silence so heavy it pressed against my chest. I felt painfully out of place in my worn jacket and delivery cap. I rang the bell. It echoed. A man in a crisp black suit opened the door. He didn't look surprised to see me. He looked expectant. Pizza delivery, I said, forcing a smile. He nodded and stepped aside. Please, come in. That should have been my first warning. Inside, the air smelled expensive. Polished wood, old books, something floral and sad. The floor was marble. My shoes squeaked as I stepped in, and I wanted to disappear. As I waited, my eyes wandered. The walls were covered with photographs. Black and white ones. Color ones. Generations of people smiling, celebrating, growing old together. A family frozen in time. Then I saw it. One small frame. A baby girl. Wrapped in a pink blanket. With a tiny birthmark just above her eyebrow. My breath caught so sharply it hurt. Because I knew that birthmark. I had stared at it my whole life in the mirror. My hands started shaking. No, I whispered. That's not possible. I stepped closer. The baby's eyes. The curve of her lips. The date written beneath the photo. It was my birthday. My vision blurred. The room spun. For a moment, I thought I might faint right there on the marble floor of a stranger's mansion. This is a mistake, I said aloud, my voice barely working. It has to be. A soft sound came from behind me. Wheels. I turned slowly. An old man sat in a wheelchair at the end of the hall. His hair was silver, his face lined with age and regret. His eyes, dark, sharp, emotional, were fixed on me like he had been waiting his entire life for this moment. His lips trembled. Ikra, he whispered. My name echoed through the mansion like a confession. My heart slammed against my ribs. How do you know my name? I demanded. Tears filled his eyes. He rolled closer, his hands shaking as he reached toward me, not touching, just hovering, like he was afraid I might vanish. I never thought I'd see you again, he said softly. Not like this. I took a step back, clutching the pizza box like it was armor. I don't know you, I said. I think I should go. He looked at the pizza box, then back at my face, a sad smile breaking through his tears. My granddaughter, he whispered. The pizza brought you home. And in that moment, standing in a mansion I didn't belong in, staring at a baby photo that proved my life was built on lies, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a delivery. It was the beginning of the truth. And the end of the life I thought I had. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The old man's words hung in the air, heavy and unreal. My granddaughter. I stared at him, waiting for my brain to reject the sentence the way it rejects bad dreams when you wake up. But I wasn't waking up. The marble floor was cold under my feet. The pizza box was still warm in my hands. "This isn't funny," I said, my voice shaking. "If this is some kind of joke." The old man raised a trembling hand. "I would never joke about this," he said softly. "Not after what I lost." Lost. That word cracked something inside me. I looked again at the baby photo on the wall. The birthmark. The date. My throat burned like I'd swallowed fire. "I've lived 22 years without you," I said. "So whoever you think I am, you're wrong." He nodded slowly, like he expected that answer. "You were taken from us," he said. "And I failed to protect you." My heart pounded. I wasn't taken. I was raised. Loved. Federation struggled for. I clenched my fists. I didn't grow up in a mansion. His eyes filled again. "I know." I watched from a distance, until I was made powerless. That sentence scared me more than anything else. Before I could ask what he meant, the man in the black suit gently took the pizza box from my hands and placed it on a side table, as if this moment was far more important than a delivery. "Sir," the man said quietly, "should I call the doctor?" "No," the old man replied. "Call the truth." I backed away. "I don't understand what's happening. I just came to deliver food." "You came home," he corrected. I shook my head. "This isn't my home." He looked around the massive hall, then back at me. "Home is not walls," he said. "It's blood. And blood remembers." I laughed, a short, broken sound. "If blood remembers, why don't I remember you?" His shoulders slumped. "Because someone made sure you wouldn't." Silence wrapped around us again. I noticed things I hadn't before, how every photo on the wall stopped abruptly after a certain year. How there were no pictures of babies after that date. How sadness lived in the corners of this beautiful place. "When was that photo taken?" I asked quietly, pointing at the baby picture. 3 days after you were born," he said. "I named you myself." My chest tightened. My name came from my mother. His lips trembled. "I named you Ikra because it means to read. To seek knowledge. To never live blindly." Something inside me shattered. That was exactly what my mother had always told me. I felt dizzy and grabbed the edge of a table to steady myself. "You're lying," I whispered. "You have to be." "If I am," he said gently, "then leave. Walk out. Never come back." He gestured toward the door. "But if even one part of you feels the truth, stay." I hated that he was right. I hated that my heart was screaming while my mind begged me to run. I stayed. He smiled sadly. "May I show you something?" I nodded, unable to speak. He wheeled himself toward a side corridor. I followed, my footsteps echoing like I was walking into a memory that didn't belong to me. We stopped in front of a closed door. He opened it. Inside was a nursery. Frozen in time. A small crib. Soft curtains. Shelves filled with untouched toys. A name carved delicately into the wood above the bed. IQRA. My knees buckled. "I never let anyone change this room," he said. "Because a part of me believed you would return." Tears streamed down my face before I could stop them. "Why now?" I asked. "Why after all these years?" He looked at me with an expression I had never seen before, hope mixed with fear. "Because someone made a mistake," he said. "And ordered pizza to the wrong address." My phone buzzed in my pocket, a missed call from my manager. I ignored it. Because in that moment, I knew something terrible and beautiful at the same time. The life I thought was mine was slipping away. And the mansion had secrets that were ready to fight back. I couldn't sleep that night. They offered me a guest room, bigger than my entire apartment, but sleep refused to come. The ceiling above me was carved with gold patterns, yet all I could see was a cracked wall from my childhood and my mother counting coins on the kitchen table. None of it made sense. At dawn, a soft knock came at the door. "Miss Ikra," a voice said gently. "Your grandfather wishes to see you." Grandfather. The word still felt illegal in my mouth. I followed the servant through silent corridors until we reached a private study. The old man sat near the window, morning light falling across his tired face. In daylight, he looked even more fragile, like time itself had been leaning on him too long. "Sit," he said, pointing to a chair across from him. I sat, my hands folded tightly in my lap. "You deserve the truth," he said. "All of it." I nodded. "Then don't protect me." A sad smile crossed his face. "You sound like your father." My heart skipped. "You knew my father?" I raised him. He closed his eyes, gathering strength. 22 years ago, he began, my son married a woman I did not approve of at first, not because she was poor, but because she was honest. And honesty scares powerful families. I listened, barely breathing. "You were born into a family worth billions," he continued. "Businesses, land, influence, enemies." Enemies. That word chilled me. "Your mother died shortly after your birth," he said quietly. The room tilted. "No. I was told she left." He shook his head slowly. "You were lied to." My chest tightened painfully. "After her death, my son planned to take you and leave this world behind," he said. "But before he could, there was an accident." I gripped the arms of the chair. "What kind of accident?" "An accident that benefited many people," he said. "And destroyed one man." I didn't have to ask who. Tears blurred my vision. "So you lost your son, and then me?" "Yes," he whispered. "And when I tried to search for you, I was blocked. Threatened. My power was stripped away piece by piece." "By who?" I demanded. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "Someone inside this house," I said. He met my eyes. "Yes." A shiver ran through me. "I was forced into this wheelchair after a stroke," he continued. "But my mind remained sharp. I watched my family change. I watched kindness turn into greed." "Why didn't you tell the police?" I asked. He laughed bitterly. "When money owns truth, police listen to money." Silence fell between us. "Why tell me now?" I asked again. He reached into his desk and pulled out a worn envelope. "Because the person who stole you believes you're dead," he said. "And because I don't have much time left." My hands shook as I took the envelope. Inside were documents. Birth records. Hospital forms. A photo of a woman holding a newborn. My mother. For the first time in my life, I saw her face. "She loved you fiercely," he said. "That's why they feared her." A tear fell onto the paper. "So what happens now?" I asked quietly. He leaned forward. "Now you stay. You learn. And you survive." "Survive what?" He looked toward the closed door, his voice dropping to a whisper. "My family." At that moment, the door opened. A woman stood there, tall, graceful, dressed in white silk. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. She looked at me like she was seeing a ghost. "Well," she said sweetly, "it seems the pizza girl decided to stay." My grandfather's jaw tightened. And for the first time since arriving, I felt it clearly. I wasn't just a lost granddaughter. I was a threat. The woman in white didn't wait for an invitation. She walked into the study like she owned the air itself, heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Her eyes never left my face, sharp, cold, calculating. "So," she said, folding her arms, "this is her." I felt smaller under her gaze, like I was something unwanted that had crawled out of the past. "This is my granddaughter," my grandfather said firmly. "And you will speak to her with respect." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Of course, father." Father. The word settled heavily in my chest. She turned to me. "I'm Farah. Your aunt." The way she said aunt made it sound like an insult. I forced myself to meet her eyes. "I didn't come here for this," I said. "I came to deliver pizza." "Yes," she replied smoothly. "And somehow you delivered yourself instead." My grandfather raised his hand. "Enough." Farah stepped back, pretending innocence. I was just surprised. We buried this tragedy years ago. Tragedy. That's what I was to her. She left the room with a soft laugh, but not before giving me one last look, the kind that promised problems. When the door closed, my grandfather sighed deeply. She never accepted your parents, he said. And she never forgave me for choosing my son over her ambitions. I swallowed. She hates me. She fears you, he corrected. That scared me more. Later that day, I couldn't stop thinking about the woman who raised me, the one I had always called Amy. Every scraped knee, every late-night prayer, every sacrifice. Was it all a lie? I needed answers. I called her. She answered on the third ring. Ikra. Beta, are you okay? Her voice nearly broke me. I need to ask you something, I said carefully. And I need the truth. Silence. Ikra, she said softly, where are you? At a mansion, I replied. With a man who says he's my grandfather. The line went dead. My heart dropped. Amy. A minute passed. Then her voice returned, shaking, older. I always knew this day would come. Tears filled my eyes. So it's true. Yes, she whispered. But not the way you think. That night, I returned to the guest room and waited. Hours later, a knock came. She stood in the doorway. The woman who raised me. The woman who lied to me. Her hands trembled as she sat across from me. They paid me, she said, staring at the floor. To disappear with you. I felt like I'd been punched. Paid you. I was young. Poor. Terrified, she cried. They told me if I refused, you would disappear forever. Who? I demanded. She shook her head violently. I can't say the name. You stole me, I whispered. She looked up, tears streaming. I saved you. My chest ached. I raised you as my own, she said. I loved you. I still do. I believed her. That was the cruelest part. Why lie about my parents? I asked. Because the truth would have gotten you killed, she said. And me too. I leaned back, exhausted. So my whole life, I said, was borrowed. She reached for my hand. I pulled away. I don't know who I am anymore, I whispered. She stood slowly. You are Ikra. And no amount of money can change that. After she left, I sat alone in a room worth more than everything I had ever owned. And I realized something devastating. The lie I was raised with didn't make me weak. It made me survive. But survival in this house was going to cost me more than I was ready to pay. If hatred had a perfume, it would smell like Farah. The morning after my return, the mansion felt different, quieter, sharper, like it was holding its breath. Servants avoided my eyes. Doors closed softly behind me. Whispers followed wherever I went. I was no longer invisible. I was inconvenient. Farah called for breakfast in the grand dining hall. The table was long enough to seat kings, yet only 3 chairs were occupied. My grandfather at the head, Farah to his right, and an empty chair across from her. For me. I sat slowly, feeling like I'd stepped onto a battlefield. Farah smiled. You look comfortable, Ikra. I slept, I replied. That's usually how comfort starts. My grandfather hid a small smile. Farah's fingers tightened around her teacup. So, she said casually, Father tells me you plan to stay. I didn't plan anything, I answered. I'm still processing. Processing what? She asked sweetly. That you might be rich. I met her gaze. That I was stolen. The word landed hard. Farah set her cup down. Careful, she said. Accusations can be dangerous. My grandfather's voice cut through the tension. Enough, Farah. She turned to him, wounded. I'm just protecting this family. No, he said calmly. You're protecting your inheritance. Silence. Then Farah laughed. Inheritance. She looked at me. Do you even know how this world works, dear? I didn't answer. She leaned forward. Money doesn't just buy comfort. It buys silence. Loyalty. Graves. My stomach twisted. After breakfast, my grandfather called his lawyer. By evening, the news spread through the house like fire. A DNA test would be conducted. Farah didn't confront me. She waited. That night, as I returned to my room, I found the door slightly open. I froze. Inside, my things were scattered. My delivery jacket lay crumpled on the floor, my phone missing from the table. Then I saw it. A photograph placed neatly on my pillow. It showed my father standing beside my grandfather, and Farah. On the back, written in elegant handwriting, "You don't belong here." My hands shook. The next day, Farah cornered me in the garden. "You should leave," she said calmly, "before this place ruins you." "You mean before I ruin you?" I replied. Her smile vanished. "You think blood makes you powerful," she hissed. "I've been running this empire for 20 years. Then why are you afraid of a pizza girl?" I asked quietly. Her eyes darkened. "Because the truth has a way of undoing liars," I continued. "And I am the truth." She stepped closer, her voice low. "If you stay, you will lose everything you love." I swallowed. "I've already lost everything." She laughed softly. "Then you have nothing to protect." That night, my grandfather called me into his study. "I've updated my will," he said. My heart raced. "You don't have to do that." "I do," he replied. "Because Farah crossed the line." He placed a document in front of me. Not ownership. Not money. Protection. "For now," he said, "you are under my name." I exhaled shakily. As I left the room, I felt it clearly. Farah wasn't just angry. She was planning something. And for the first time in my life, I understood a dangerous truth. In this house, love made you weak. And I was surrounded by people who knew exactly how to use that against me. It happened just after midnight. I was awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. Sleep wouldn't come. The mansion was too quiet, the kind of silence that makes your heartbeat sound like a warning. Then I heard it. A crash. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just wrong. I stood up slowly, my skin prickling. Another sound followed, metal scraping against marble. A wheelchair. My heart slammed into my ribs. I ran. The hallway lights flickered as I reached the staircase. A crowd of servants had already gathered at the bottom, frozen in horror. My grandfather lay there, at the foot of the stairs. His wheelchair was overturned, one wheel still spinning like it hadn't accepted what had happened yet. Blood trickled from his temple onto the white marble floor, turning it into something ugly and permanent. "No," I whispered, pushing forward. "No, no, no." "Ikra, stop," someone shouted. I dropped to my knees beside him. "Grandpa," I said, my voice breaking. "Please, open your eyes." His chest moved. Barely. Relief and terror hit me at the same time. Doctors arrived. The house exploded into noise, orders, crying, phones ringing. I stood back as they lifted him onto a stretcher, my hands shaking, my clothes stained with his blood. Farah appeared at the top of the stairs. She wore a silk robe, her hair perfectly in place. "Oh my God," she gasped, one hand to her mouth. "How tragic." I looked up at her. Her eyes weren't shocked. They were annoyed. At the hospital, they said it was an accident. "A weak man," the doctor explained gently. "Lost balance. These things happen." I nodded. But I didn't believe him. Because I remembered something. Earlier that evening, I had seen Farah speaking to one of the guards near the staircase. Whispering. Arguing. And when she noticed me, she had smiled like nothing was wrong. I stayed by my grandfather's bedside all night. Machines beeped steadily, keeping time like a clock counting down. At dawn, he opened his eyes. "Ikra," he whispered. I leaned closer. "I'm here." His hand weakly gripped mine. "The stairs," he breathed. They were wet. My blood ran cold. "They cleaned them," he continued. "Too quickly." I swallowed hard. "Who?" He looked toward the door. Fear filled his eyes. "Trust no one," he whispered. Especially. The door opened. Farah walked in, smiling softly. "Father, you're awake. What a relief." His grip tightened painfully on my hand. He said nothing more. Later that day, security footage from the staircase was mysteriously missing. "Technical failure," Farah explained calmly. "Unfortunate timing." The police closed the case. Accident. I returned to the mansion knowing one thing with absolute certainty. Someone had tried to kill my grandfather. And that someone lived under the same roof as me. That night, I locked my door for the first time. I placed a chair under the handle. And as I lay awake in the dark, a terrifying thought settled into my chest. If they were willing to kill him to protect their lies, what would they do to me? I didn't go home after the hospital. I went to the place I had avoided for days, the small apartment where my entire fake life had lived. The walls were still the same dull color. The fan still made that broken clicking sound. Nothing here knew that a man almost died because of me. She was waiting. The woman who raised me. The woman I had loved without question. She opened the door before I could knock, like she'd been standing there listening for my footsteps. "Ikra," she whispered. I walked past her without a word. We sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, the same one where she once helped me count tips after long shifts. My hands were steady now. That scared me more than shaking ever did. "They tried to kill my grandfather," I said flatly. Her face drained of color. "Say it," I demanded. "Say what you know." She clasped her hands together, knuckles white. "I prayed this day would never come." "I'm done with prayers," I said. "I want truth." She took a deep breath. "They didn't just pay me to take you," she said. "They paid me to stay silent forever." My chest tightened. "Who is they?" She looked at the floor. "Your aunt." The room felt suddenly too small. "She came to me the night your father died," she continued. "She said the family was in danger, that you would be next." I laughed bitterly. "So she saved me." "No," she said quickly. "She saved herself." I stood up. "You lied to me my whole life for money." She looked up, tears spilling. "At first, yes. But then I loved you. I swear, I loved you." "How much?" I asked quietly. She flinched. "Enough to keep you alive." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a folded document. Old. Yellowed. A contract. My name was written on it. My disappearance had a price. "I tried to leave once," she whispered. "When you were 10. She found me." My stomach twisted. "Found you how?" "She reminded me that accidents happen," she said. "Especially to girls who ask questions." Silence swallowed the room. "So every struggle," I said slowly, "every unpaid bill, every tear, was part of the deal." "Yes." I closed my eyes. "And my real mother?" I asked. "What really happened to her?" Her voice broke. "She was poisoned. Slowly. So it would look natural." I grabbed the table to stay standing. "She threatened to expose everything," she continued. "Your aunt made sure she never spoke again." I couldn't breathe. "She killed my parents," I whispered. "She destroyed everyone who stood in her way," the woman said. "Including you, just differently." I turned toward the door. "Ikra," she cried. "Where are you going?" "To stop being afraid," I replied. As I stepped outside, I understood something clearly for the first time in my life. I wasn't raised poor by accident. I wasn't lost by fate. I was erased. And the woman who erased me was still walking free, smiling in silk, calling herself family. I returned to the mansion differently. Not quietly. Not apologetically. I walked through the front gate with my head high, wearing my old jeans and jacket, the same clothes Farah once mocked. The guards straightened when they saw me. They knew now. Everyone did. Because my grandfather had woken up. And the first thing he asked for was me. The lawyer arrived that afternoon. Documents spread across the table like weapons disguised as paper. Farah sat across from us, calm on the surface, furious underneath. "I don't understand the rush," she said sweetly. Father is still recovering. That is exactly why we are rushing, my grandfather replied. Before another accident happens. Her smile faltered for half a second. The lawyer cleared his throat. The DNA results are conclusive. Miss Ikra is the biological granddaughter and primary blood heir. The words landed heavy. Primary. Farah laughed softly. Blood doesn't make a leader. No, I said, speaking for the first time. But truth does. Her eyes snapped to me. The lawyer continued. Effective immediately, Miss Ikra will be publicly acknowledged as part of the family. Public. That was Farah's weakness. Within hours, the news leaked. Headlines. Social media. Rumors. Billionaire's lost granddaughter returns after 22 years. Cameras lined the gates. The world wanted a story. Farah wanted control. She cornered me in the hallway later that night. You think this makes you powerful? She hissed. They will eat you alive. I survived without money, I replied calmly. You wouldn't last a week without it. Her hand twitched. For the first time, she walked away. I stood in front of a mirror that evening, wearing a simple black dress someone had laid out for me. I didn't recognize the girl staring back. But I trusted her. My grandfather called me into his room. I should have protected you, he said. I can't change the past, but I can secure your future. He handed me a small velvet box. Inside was a ring. Not flashy. Heavy. Engraved with the family crest. This makes you visible, he said. And visibility is safety. I slid it onto my finger, feeling its weight. That night, I placed my old pizza delivery cap in the drawer beside my bed. Not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't need armor anymore. I was no longer invisible. I was an heiress. And Farah had just lost something she could never steal again. Control. Power doesn't announce itself loudly. It waits. Since the public reveal, the mansion felt like a chessboard. Every smile hid calculation. Every kind word carried a price. I learned quickly that wealth didn't change people, it revealed them. I spent days reading documents, nights listening instead of sleeping. And that's when I found it. A hidden account. Shell companies. Payments stretching back 22 years. All leading to one name. Farah. I took the files to my grandfather. He listened silently, his face heavy with exhaustion and pride. You can destroy her with this, he said. But destruction has consequences. I don't want revenge, I said. I want the truth. He nodded slowly. Then be prepared to lose something. That night, Farah invited me for tea. We sat across from each other like civilized enemies. You've grown confident, she said. I've grown honest, I replied. She leaned in. End this quietly. I'll leave the country. You'll keep the money. I stared at her. You killed my parents. She smiled faintly. I protected this empire. I stood up. I choose justice, I said. Her expression hardened. Then you choose war. The next morning, the police arrived. So did reporters. So did the board. Farah was arrested for financial crimes, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. As they led her away, she looked at me. You think this makes you clean? She spat. This world will stain you. I watched her go. Not smiling. Not crying. Just breathing. That night, my grandfather's health worsened. I sat beside him, holding his hand. You did right, he whispered. No empire is worth stolen blood. Tears slid down my face. What happens now? I asked. He smiled weakly. Now you decide who you become. I realized something quietly, painfully clear. I had won. But winning had cost me innocence, comfort, and the simple joy of being unknown. And tomorrow, I would have to live with that. The morning my grandfather died, the mansion was silent. Not the tense silence I had grown used to, but a soft, respectful stillness, like the house itself was bowing its head. I sat beside his bed, holding his hand long after the machines went quiet. For the first time since I arrived, there was no fear left in his eyes. Only peace. You came back to me, he had whispered just hours before. That was my miracle. I kissed his forehead and let the tears fall freely. I didn't hide them. I didn't apologize for them. Grief was the one thing money couldn't buy, and I allowed myself to feel it fully. The funeral was grand. World leaders, business giants, people who had never known him standing shoulder to shoulder, praising a man they admired from a distance. I stood among them, dressed in black, unnoticed by most. That was fine. The will was read 2 days later. I expected numbers, assets, power. Instead, my grandfather had left me something far more dangerous. His name. Everything he owned passed to me, the businesses, the properties, the influence, but with one condition. I was to fund an independent foundation in my parents' names. One that protected women and children erased by power, just like I once was. The room was silent. This wasn't just inheritance. It was responsibility. That night, alone in my room, I opened a drawer and pulled out my old pizza delivery bag. The straps were worn. The logo was faded. It smelled faintly of oil and heat. I smiled through tears. That bag had fed me, protected me, taught me humility. I placed it carefully on a shelf, not as a memory of poverty, but as proof of strength. I stood in front of the same wall where I had first seen my baby photo. Now, beside it, hung a new frame. A picture of me, not as a baby, not as an heiress, but as a woman who survived the truth. I whispered softly, I found you. Not the mansion. Not the money. Myself. And as the sun rose over the estate, I made a silent promise. I would never let this world erase anyone again. Because I was once just a girl delivering pizza. And now, I was the one rewriting the story.